Spooner Middle School 8th graders spent Friday morning, September 15th, learning about local history by listening to a lecture from local historian Rod Ripley, visiting Spooner museums, and a bus tour of notable places in the city.
Was the main part of the dining room, which now you'll see a much better picture when you get inside, but it seated 82 people at the counter and another 80 people at the formal dining room, so it seated 162 people. So this whole building was just restaurant. Okay.
For a field trip, learning about Spooner history throughout town today.
And what are they doing? What exactly does that entail?
Well, we broke our 8th grade class up into 3 different groups, and we're with the first group here starting out at the Railroad Memories Museum. We have another group up at the middle school with a presentation from Rod Ripley, and then the third group will be doing a bus tour, stopping at the different heritage points throughout downtown and learning about the history of town through the tour.
Finally through the Spooner area in 1876 up to Chandler. Up where the great big gravel pit is up there. That was the end of the track in 1876, and they platted on a piece of ground, built a bunch of buildings. And the next year they built up the cable. So when they came to what is now Spooner, because we were one of the last areas in the state of Wisconsin to be settled. In fact, they were still homesteading land in 1919. But this is kind of a strange phenomenon because...
Right here. The one covered up by trees. Okay, let's sit up! Okay, 8th graders, off to the right over here, come toward the front of the bus, is this white house. It is the Signer House. George V. Signer purchased a large piece of land from Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha Railway in 1898. This house was built on that land in 1904. You will see this little tan house right here. It also has a plaque kind of hanging in the front. That is the old Chandler house. This house was moved to Spooner from Chandler by use of flat cars. Okay, if you look to your left is the Gosling Court now. Before it was the Gosling Court, it was a Spooner Bottling Company. At the site of what is now Gosling Court stood Spooner Bottling Company. The company made some of its very own pop and purchased Pepsi Cola to bottle it in their own glass bottles. Okay, and behind us here we have Triangle Park off to your right. Spooner's first family, the Scribners, first lived at Chandler, the town preceding Spooner. When Chandler was vacated, George W. Scribner, who had been postmaster at Chandler, moved the post office to Spooner, where he continued to administer the mail for 10 more years at his general store, the Hall. It is one of the oldest existing structures in Spooner. This building was constructed in about 1892 at a cost of, anyone want to take a guess? Sam? Very good, $3,500. Very good guess. Early on, there were actually 3 theaters in Spooner. It was a hopping place. The original Palace Theater was said to have been located where the bowling alley is today. The business was moved to its present location in 1939. It has been a long-standing tradition for Santa Claus to visit at a special Saturday. Okay, if you look at the sports complex here, kids, this was actually Hamel Elementary School. In 1922, a 14-room brick building for grades 1 through 8 was constructed on this site. Prior to this, a small school with several additions and changes had been here. Hamel School was named in honor of Frank Hamel, who had died earlier that year. The school served the community for more than 60 years until it was judged too old and too small to serve the need, and our current elementary was built west of Highway K. It was later sold to Spooner Area Civic Center Group and demolished to build the current Northwest Sports Complex. This is the large 2-story house was built about 1900 for the family of Jesse D. Thomas. Thomas came to Spooner from Chippewa Falls to manage Hotel Spooner in its eating house and restaurant. It is called the Thomas House. You'll see another house with that plaque hanging in the front yard. This is the Hamel House. This home was built in 1903 for railroad engineer Frank Hamel. Please listen. This was the same year Hamel was elected village president. In 1904, Hamel purchased the Spooner Advocate and became a newspaper publisher. By 1910, the village of Spooner had become a city, and Hamel was elected its first mayor. For all he had done for the city, Hamel became known as the father of Spooner. He died in this very house in 1922, and the wake was held in the foyer. There's fine jewelry. In 1901, Spooner State Bank erected a new 2-story brick building in the middle of a lot on the northeast side of Walnut Street. The upstairs would house the Masonic Lodge. In 1916, the bank and Masonic Lodge moved locations, and local jeweler, watchmaker, optometrist, and photographer Arthur R. Sather moved his business into the building. It was family-owned business until 1997 when it was purchased by Steve and Lori Hubbard. Memories Museum. Spooner's first railroad depot was a small building, which was likely moved here from Chandler when Spooner was established in 1883. Wow.
It's a little bit different. If you look at the hull shape, it's longer, it's more slender, a little narrower. This is representative of Melseat Indians, Algonquin, out in Maine, New Hampshire, and so forth. They didn't have, and they don't harvest wild rice out there, so the short spout boats weren't needed quite as much. Their boats were used mainly for hunting, fishing, and for transportation.